We are continuing our series on Jonah, and today I want to talk about the phenomenon of being spiritually checked out. Some of you can relate. Perhaps you've read books about people who are spiritually checked out. Perhaps you're undergoing that right now, or there was a time when you were living that way. I know I can relate to that. And it's easy to sort of dunk on people who are spiritually checked out, and just, the title of this sermon is Wake Up. I don't know if I put an exclamation point at the end of that or not, but, that's all you do. Yeah, there we go. So, wake up. So there will be a wake-up appeal during this sermon. But I also think it's important to understand the appeal of being checked out. It's very destructive, but it's understandable why we go in that direction. Andrew Sullivan is a writer, and he wrote a column. It was either in the New Yorker or New York Magazine, I get them confused, on opioid addiction. He wrote it 6 or 7 years ago. And he wrote about why does this thing that can destroy your life have so much appeal? And this is what he said. I don't have it projected, so just listen. He said, when we see the addicted stumbling around like ghosts, or collapsed on sidewalks or in restrooms, their faces pale, their skin riddled with infection, their eyes dead to the world, we often see only misery. What we do not see is what they see. In those moments, they feel beyond gravity, entranced away from pain and sadness. In the addict's eyes, it is those who are sober who are asleep. That is why the police and EMS workers who rescue those slipping towards death by administering blasts of naloxone, Narcan, a powerful antidote without which death rates would be even higher, they are almost never thanked. They are hated because they've ruined the high. This is one of the many reasons why addiction is so hard to break, is because there is an appeal to that state. To be numbed out is tragic and often leads to death. Yet from the perspective of the person who is high, you can understand the allure of being checked out. Jonah, in our text today, he is in a downward spiral. There's a repeat of a word in chapter 1, and that word is down. Jonah goes down to Joppa. Then he gets on the ship, going in the opposite direction of where God wanted him to go. And then he goes down into the hold of the ship. And then he goes down to his bunk. And ultimately, he winds up fast asleep. And I think Jonah here is not only physically tired, but I believe the text is trying to tell us something. He is in a downward spiral. He is in a deep and dangerous spiritual slumber. And it's kind of telling, all of a sudden, they're in a crisis. A big storm is happening. And the sailors start to freak out. I'm not a fan of airplanes. I don't like turbulence. And when the flight attendants sit down, I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. If they're still up serving drinks, then it's like, I could live through this. That's what's going on with these seasoned sailors. They're freaking out. They're throwing stuff overboard. They're trying to save lives. In addition, they have much more spiritual awareness than Jonah. They know that this isn't just a big storm, but it has divine origins. They start praying to any manner of gods that they may worship. Yet Jonah, the man of God, prophet of the Holy One of Israel, who makes a very theologically sound confession of faith. Look at his confession of faith in verse 9. I am Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, all caps. That's the covenant name of God. Not just the generic name of God, but the covenant name, Yahweh. I worship the right God. I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. But Jonah, this guy with the amazing theology, is utterly asleep. He is completely detached and apathetic. He should have been engaged, but he is apathetic and checked out. When I sent the worship prep out email on Friday, one of my friends responded to me with a hip-hop song, and I'm a 58-year-old white guy raised in the suburbs, so I'm not a hip-hop person. It's not that I dislike hip-hop, it's just not my jam. But anyway, this is a song from an artist called NF. Anybody know NF? One or two? No, nobody? Okay. Me and my friend. And this, what I thought was amazing, is you've got 21st century hip-hop and a Iron Age Hebrew prophet text kind of getting at the same thing. And this is the opening to this song called Wake Up. It's so good. You spend your life in a dream that you can't escape. Because you live your life in a coma. You're never awake. If you'd open your eyes, then maybe you'd see what's at stake. You're sleeping. You're sleeping. Can you relate to this? You're there, but not really there. Present, but kind of with a 1,000-yard stare. Maybe even theologically sound, like Jonah, but spiritually on the inside, you're fast asleep. More and more anesthetized to what is going on around you. Even when your lethargy threatens the lives and the well-being of those who are around you. It's a chilling book. This is a dystopian book, I believe. So how did Jonah get there? How did he get to be asleep in the bottom of a ship, heading for nowhere? It wasn't always this way for him. There was a time when his parents used to brag about him. He was a prophet to kings of Israel. And he had seen God come through again and again and again on his word to protect his people and defeat their enemies. And life was good. But then, God threw Jonah a curveball. He was like, now what I want you to do, instead of prophesying the downfall of your enemies, I want you to go to them. Call them out for their wickedness, but so that they can turn from their wickedness and turn to me and be forgiven and restored and healed. And so God calls Jonah to go to Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. And it was a wicked, ruthless, and brutal empire. They were not nice people. And God says, I want you to go there, to that great city. And Jonah couldn't conceive of it. This is the picture that was on 2 weeks ago, the children's order of worship. You know, there's Jonah. He's supposed to go to Nineveh. He goes in the exact opposite direction. He's supposed to go east, and he goes to west. He goes west. He went as far as he could in the other direction. Now, a critical question here is, why did God send Jonah to Nineveh? Because God loved Nineveh. The sort of literary heart of the book of Jonah is this phrase, that great city. God seemed to love Nineveh, and he saw potential in Nineveh. And he desired for Nineveh to be reconciled to him and be reunited with him. That's amazing. It's amazing vision and hope. You talk about a transformation. And God wanted Jonah to be part of that miracle. He's saying, hey, Jonah, I want to work something beautiful that you can't even imagine. And guess what? I don't want to do it by myself. I want you to partner with me. In other words, God wanted Jonah's vision, conception, experience of God to get bigger. So that Jonah could not just know in his head, but also profoundly experience and know in his heart and know from his own story the vastness of God's love and grace. But Jonah said, I don't think so. I want to go in the other direction. And that began his slow decline into spiritual apathy that we find him in chapter 1. And eventually asleep in the dark cargo hold of a ship. When I had been the pastor here for about 5 years, so it was late 2000s, I knew that God was calling me to do something that I needed to do, but was really hard. And I didn't want to do it. I was afraid to do it. I was afraid of, would I be up for the task? What would be the fallout of all this? So whenever God would bring that to my attention, I would hit the snooze button. I'd be like, sorry, I am not ready to get up. And on old school alarm clocks, the snooze button is really big and the slide switch is really small. So you don't even have to be awake at all. Just bang it with your fist and you get 9 more minutes of glorious, glorious sleep. And that's what I was doing. And I began to grow apathetic. And God kept pursuing me and pursuing me. The alarm kept going off. And eventually, I won't go into details, eventually I got up. That's what God is doing with Jonah. He is trying to wake him up. Sends a storm to him, surrounds him with these pagan Gentile sailors who are actually really spiritually in tune. They know what's going on, and those guys will not leave him alone. They're like, hey, what do you do? What's your God? What's your story? And they just pepper him with questions. And all Jonah wants to do is put the noise-canceling headphones on and go back to sleep. So why is God doing this? He's not smiting Jonah. Oh, Jonah stepped outside of God's plan, so God is going to smite him and, with a big storm. No, he's trying to wake him up. He loves him. Remember, God has a miracle in mind. And he's like, man, you're not going to believe this. This is going to be so freaking cool, and I want you to join me. That's why I'm trying to get you out of bed. God pursues us even when we fall asleep. Jonah's fast asleep, and it's easy to hate on him. And God's like, yeah, sure, he'd be awake, but I'm going to keep trying to wake this guy up. So how does Jonah respond? Happy ending, right? Oh, yes, Lord, I'm so sorry. No, verse 12. He said to them, Jonah said to the sailors, pick me up and hurl me into the sea, then the sea will quiet down for you, for I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. Now, Jonah had options. He could have repented. He could have said, you know what? Can you turn around and take me back to Joppa? Because I really need to be somewhere else. But he didn't do that. He said, throw me overboard. And he's in the middle of the ocean. What is he asking them to do? Kill him. And they get that. They're like, and now they're praying to God with the covenant name of God. They're like, Lord, Yahweh, we don't want the blood of an innocent man on our hands. They know he is asking to die. And here's what Jonah is saying to this invitation to an experience of the vastness of God. He's saying, God, I'd rather die than repent. I would rather you remain small and predictable, and the God who always smites my enemies and hates the people that I hate and loves the people that I love, who never does anything that's going to push me or stretch me. I want a God who is still captive to my own imagination. If I have to choose between an enormous God, a radically merciful God, a mind-blowingly gracious God, and death, then I choose death. He's like the person who gets Narcaned. Why did you wake me up? I had a nice little thing going. It was killing me, but boy, was it predictable. Boy, was it safe in its own way, even though it was destroying me. So the sailors throw Jonah into the sea. Is the story over for Jonah? Nope, absolutely not. I got some help over there, absolutely. It is not over for Jonah. And the rest of the book has this beautiful character where it's about God's relationship with Nineveh, but it's also about God's relationship with Jonah. Because the mission of God, God's desire to go into the Ninevehs of the world and to reconcile the Ninevehs of the world with himself, and the transformation of the people of God, they go hand in hand. They are two sides of the same coin. So that's what the rest of the book of Jonah is all about. God pursuing Nineveh, but also God pursuing Jonah. So let me conclude with some important questions, and I'm going to leave it as a cliffhanger because chapter 1 ends on a cliffhanger. Tune in next week. Where might God be inviting you into a place where he has to get bigger? It might be exciting to you, but it also might be a little scary. Perhaps fear has kept you from going there. Maybe you've sort of known about it or sensed it in your spirit for months, maybe a year or two or longer, and you begin to kind of drift off to sleep. And you think about it, and you just reach over and hit the alarm clock one more time and hit snooze and buy yourself 9 more glorious minutes. Where might God be seeking to wake you up? In his kindness. Because he has big dreams for the world, and he has big dreams for his people, and he has big dreams for you. The question for all of us is this, will you wake up? Will I wake up? Amen.